Guys, this is a video about Kamala Harris and to just give you some idea of who is talking to you. I have 135 IQ, I had a spiritual awakening, I can read body languages, I can feel energy blockages in people, I see their traumas, I see their karmic problems, I see I learned 7 programming languages on my own. I learned 5 normal languages on my own. I speak them fluently. So just to give you a rough idea, and I've done many different things in life, and now I'm doing van life and traveling basically throughout Europe and soon through the whole world. And now so I'm sorry about the English if it's not absolutely perfect, but I mix it with a lot of other languages. So what I'm going to talk about is Kamala Harris, and I want to talk about it because it's probably, in my lifetime at least, the most important voting that's going to happen. I'm not American. I'm not related to, what's happening in America in a sense, like being directly there, but it will affect the whole world, and I feel I should say something to this. So we'll look at my kind of like intuitive higher access to these informations, and some people might relate, some people might not. We'll see what happens. So first of all, like when Chris had this interview with Eric Weinstein about, and then asking him, what does it mean, that sentence, to unburden from what has been? And I'm just gonna go and not use that phrase from any intellectual point of view. Of course, for Kamala Harris, I'm sure it makes a lot of sense because her father was an intellectual, and I'm sure she tried to live up to what her father wanted her or wants her to be. But I'm just gonna start this from a different direction. First of all, I feel 2 very interesting energies in Kamala Harris. One is, and we'll compare that to Trump as well, by the way. The first one is that she feels that she must pretend to be more than she really is. Kind of like, in the sense like, look here, I'm so good, Papa. Look here, I'm so good, Daddy. I actually know I can be as good as you. Basically looking for approval on an intellectual level, or here, look at me, what I can do. And you notice the counter reaction to that, which is like, sometimes you see in her facial expressions like, I'm too stupid, and it seems like I'm not being, I actually don't believe that I'm good enough, and I'm looking for approval from the other side, whether that which I just said is okay, which also means at the same time I don't really believe what I'm saying. So, for example, what are you gonna do about the economy? Yeah, well, we're gonna have a tax credit. And then she goes like, in this kind of like, is it okay? And she asks people unconsciously, she asks people who are not even related to the topic whether it's okay what she's doing. It's kind of like, if you're not convinced about what you're doing, you don't have a factual idea of what you're doing, and you're just like saying things and hoping to get by if people like eat it. And that's very interesting because it literally means that she doesn't have real competence, and especially as a leader, you cannot have low competence in so many different areas where you're looking for approval, because it also makes you highly susceptible to manipulation from the outside, where people can use that emotion against you and start to manipulate you and what you should be actually doing. So, and from the phrase, what unburdened from what has been, means that something else in the past, she's not alluding to specific points when she says that in history. She's just saying, she's basically saying something in the past has not been good, and we kind of need to forget about it or wipe it out from history in order to start something new. And this is something super interesting because there's an assumption in there that the past or something in the past was inherently bad. And so it's actually a negative view of, of the past rather than an optimistic view. Because if it were an optimistic view, you don't even need to mention the past. And you need to bring in history as part of the learning process also. So, and it's very clear that she has some kind of mental, in comparison to other people, there's something going on the mental level for her which seems almost like a retardation, in the sense like she speaks, it seems like some form of slurry speech. It could be being drunk, it could be being on medication, it could be something permanent. We don't know, but there's definitely something which is kind of like, which seems like drunk, as if someone were intoxicated in some form. Kind of like, kind of like that kind of thing. And I'm not trying to be insulting or something. This is just something with... I'm an energy healer. I forgot to mention that as well. So I did over 1,000 tantra massages with women, and I can feel energy blockages and so-called nadis, which are like energetic channels. I can feel them with my hands and release them. So I have an insane ability to feel certain like energy, kind of how the energy flows throughout the body and would cause a certain emotions and impulses and speech and all of these things. So I can see that. And now, just to be clear, pretty much all of people, including politicians, are traumatized. It's very rare to find untraumatized people. You have to be really a full-time yogi and understand what you're doing to release yourself from past trauma, this kind of stuff. So you're not gonna see like somebody going into politics and putting that burden of everything that that they have to go through in order to go there. They will never do that by free choice. It will always be a trauma that leads them there. And so even a Trump has his problems. But the interesting thing about Trump in comparison is that Trump seems just like someone who is... Trump has a problem with the solar plexus. But it's almost like the opposite problem of Kamala Harris, where Kamala Harris in her solar plexus doesn't feel adequate and doesn't feel accepted. And it's with Kamala Harris, it's so clear that it stems from something with her parents or never feeling good enough. That's super, super clear. And with Trump, it's kind of like that overconfident solar plexus. And you recognize it because he really doesn't care. So, I mean, he's been almost twice killed and he still kind of doesn't care. In the sense, doesn't care like in comparison to other people. Other people would like shit their pants and go home. And he also doesn't care what people think or say about him. And he said it himself, you need to have like this thick skin or you just cannot care that much. That's actually exactly his words. You cannot care that much. And Kamala Harris has the opposite. She really like cares a lot about what other people think of her. So not about, cares about other people, but cares about what other people think of her. So it's mostly about her in the same way that it's about Trump, but with the added insecurity. And you really don't want an insecure leader as a leader of the most powerful military economic nation in the world. So so if I think about, what she also is trying to do, Kamala Harris, with her hand gestures, try to overtly cement what she's saying in order for that which she's saying to appear as more powerful. So she go like, like this, because she actually has trouble to say a powerful thought. So she's trying to add the body emotion of, hey, this is really important. Look, this is important, and so coming from, I'm a very, when it comes to politics, I'm not that much involved, but when it comes to something important like this, for me, the most important is the promise of no war. I'm a pacifist in a sense, like, avoid any kind of bloodshed possible, and it's very clear to me that Kamala Harris and any kind of other Democrat that has gone before her the last times is they're not anti-war, whereas Trump very clearly is anti-war. And it's interesting, there is so much hypocrisy in people nowadays, no matter where they are on the spectrum. It's like, on one side you're like the vegan vegetarian because you have ethical reservations about animal treatment and or environment, but on the other side you're supporting the war in Ukraine, and you don't believe that Trump can stop the war. That to me is very hypocritical, because it's super clear that he's probably the only one who could literally like stop it within a few hours just talking to Putin. And so you cannot be okay with people being killed but animals not being killed. Like, what's that, So there's a lot of hypocrisy in people, and especially also on the left. And I think that if you took your time to prepare yourself for an argument against most Democrats or leftists, left liberals, you would probably be able to go back to those kind of arguments and realize that they're like, a lot of them are just full of shit, absolutely full of shit. And so instead of doing like these high level talks of the actual topic, you could just say like, okay, are you vegan? Are you vegetarian? Yes, of course. I love animals. So how can you support war? Well, we have to, no, either you, then I could just say, okay, then occasionally why not eat meat? And then it'd be like, yeah, because So you have to be consistent, you have to be authentic, you have to be integer with your morals if you truly believe in them. Otherwise, you're just hypocritical. And there is something else which I want to talk about. I'm sorting my thoughts randomly. Is one of the problems is also that although I have a 135 IQ, I realize that even with 135 IQ, I'm still not smart enough to kind of like, let's say, it's barely smart enough to keep everything afloat, in the sense like understanding how things work and rearranging them to make them work better. And when I look at people who are dumber than me, which most people are, just, in terms of IQ, I wonder sometimes how the world works, because it's literally like anything that's like below 120 is actually pretty stupid. When I see how people argument, I'm not gonna go into what has happened the last 3-4 years. You know what I'm talking about. people have been absolutely insane in their brain, and even the fact that you're not allowed to talk about it shows how insane people have been. So you wonder really how the world manages to work, if the average intelligence level is still so low. So if I were to talk about the future, I would say probably the two biggest developments for our society will be artificial intelligence and the ability through nootropics or any kind of DNA or other kind of, manipulation of the body to become more intelligent. Because on average, we're extremely stupid still as people. And we need to become more intelligent, and our technology needs to become more intelligent. Because I don't see how we will continue evading a World War III or something else with that kind of stupidity. And I'm not just talking about politics. I'm talking generally, like the population is the general population is extremely stupid, and that's how we come to people like, Trump and Kamala Harris and all of these other people. Because, for me, as a highly intelligent person who is also has like a scope of vision which is broader in a lot of ways than other people, I can see all of that. But anybody who's stupider, not as sensitive, doesn't have that scope of vision, also that spiritual scope and everything, they just cannot see it. So sometimes it's like you just have, like, if you, let's say you have a 90 IQ and you're watching me and you don't know anything about politics, you don't know anything about body language, you don't know anything about people, you haven't done you don't know about anything about energy healing, you would just have to take my word for it, because there is no way for you to understand. You'll just go by feelings, and it's said that 80%, 90% of decisions are made by feelings, like the way you feel about someone. And this is actually what the politicians are using, especially Kamala Harris is using. She's using her feelings, your feelings. She's using your feelings in order to vote for her. And I think because that's how it works, and because if you don't have other capacities other than your emotions, you cannot make you're going to use your emotions to make that decision. Whereas I would say, for example, use other forms of input, like the spiritual input, the akashic input, the energy healing input, the body language reading input, the intellectual input, everything to make a decision that way and not the emotional way. But most people will decide emotionally. And the problem is that there is so much trauma and hurt, especially on the female and left liberal side, that she can easily instrumentalize that hurt for her benefit. So she'd be like, the suffering that women went through. Actually, if she never did that directly, but if she's too stupid for that, but if she were really smart, she would focus a lot on the suffering of the women, on the suffering of so-and-so. And people will be like, yeah, I suffered a lot. And they'll vote for her because of that. Because they'll assume that she can alleviate the suffering. And that's actually the best platform to run on nowadays, because so many people are suffering and but not just economically, I mean literally traumatized emotionally. There's also something called emotional transport, which is, I call this emotional transport, which is one of the most interesting things we should sometimes study in social dynamic context, is if a woman suffers, all the other women will pick up her emotions. I call this emotional transport. And they'll make decisions based on the hurt of that one woman. It's almost like an energetic, emotional kind of displacement or kind of like copying. Copying is probably more accurate. And then women be like, yeah, this black woman, she was hurt so much. This, woman with abortion, she was hurt so much. I feel it. That's why we need to vote for Kamala Harris. And that's also what you saw on Oprah Winfrey. When she had that kind of like meeting in her kind of thing. It was all about, when you looked at it, there was mostly only women sitting and soy boys. And you could see literally like this kind of like, you need to vote for her because she's a woman, she's marginalized, whatever, she comes from a normal household. It's all bullshit, of course, and it's the instrumentalization of emotion to get you to vote for a candidate who is not good for you. So this is super, super interesting. And I would say it's actually very simple. It's actually a very simple decision. You have to vote for a candidate that fixes the high level problems. Inflation in the US. Inflation, immigration, costs, which Elon Musk would say he would basically take care of that, costs of government go down. And foreign relations in terms of stopping wars. I think those are the four most important things, and all of them are covered by Trump. So, an abortion, while women consider this a personal important issue, it's actually not one of the most important platforms why you should vote. And you might it's even funny from the standpoint is that less and less women actually have children, and less people have sex, and we have a depopulation because of that, and so it's not even the most important issue in current society. You would have to actually vote for somebody who encourages women to get pregnant, and to consider pregnancies from rape or something. Like, what's the statistic on that? So I wouldn't use those things. It's literally just emotional voting. It's not logical voting, like what's the most important thing for our society in total. And plus, how I understood it, it would be state-wise then, and so you could just move to another state or whatever. But it's literally, you cannot take that issue as an issue why you would vote for somebody. And I have to say this, having been in different cultures, especially in Europe, also knowing different cultures, knowing different languages, there are certain cultures which are generally more stupid than others. For example, the Spanish are literally more stupid than the French. Like, when you speak to them, even in their own language, you recognize it. When you listen to them, the Spanish sound really stupid a lot of times. That's how it is. I mean, and I speak fluent, perfect Spanish. And the French, which I understand as well, can speak a little bit, they just sound much more intelligent. So I would say they're more educated, better. And anywhere I've been in France, you feel like, even if it's just a garbage collector, you feel like you're having a conversation at a higher level than in Spain. And and I have to say, the Americans, on average, when I listen to them, when I hear them, are pretty stupid. I'm not saying like all of it, because you have these scientists and these kind of people, but I'm just the average person. So it's going to be interesting, and those people are very susceptible to voting on emotional issues. Like, if you take the average American woman, she'll probably vote using her emotions. And I'm not trying to be mean or something. I'm just saying how it is. And like I said, you have to have a certain level of intelligence before you recognize that you're being manipulated emotionally. I think that's a good place to stop this video. Recognize that, when you're being manipulated into emotional voting, because that's gonna make you vote incorrectly. I think it's very wrong to see Trump as the enemy. And I'm not a Trumper in the sense, like, I would say, I find him, to be, I wouldn't want him to be a friend or family member. But just like pretty much no politician or celebrity, but he's the better choice in terms of like securing those 4 points that I was talking about before.